Hey guys, welcome to the review here on Go Mango.
No!
As always, I'm your host, Cinder Blaze. With me today we have...
Frozen Strata.
Ignore how he looks. We're just gonna go into this review, which I thought was a really good, setup episode for what's to come in, the future. I thought, we kind of, slowed it down, a lot. A lot of, the group dynamics are kind of, slowly kind of, brittling away. I think a lot of the power from... I don't know why I'm jumping into something so hard so early into review. but a lot of, the power from Dynazenon, I feel comes from, their energy and just, how they're, feeling in the moment. I think when we had Yomogi and Yume's bond kind of, forming throughout the last couple of episodes, that, when they did, transform into Dynazenon, it was a much stronger transformation. They were wiping the floor with the kaiju. And right here, no, he's not feeling the same way, because Yume has been distancing herself from him and maybe being a little bit closer to the kaiju, the kaiju guys, or at least that one in particular who's their classmate. Because I think he did have a little scene where he's oh well, she was talking to him but not me, so maybe there's a little breakdown there. And then we also have it for our shut-in, who is just kind of building this relationship with one of his former acquaintances in high school.
Right.
But then when he kind of meets her husband and kind of goes through that whole debacle, that grueling
Right.
hangout and conversation, it's kind of wearing down on him as well. So a lot of these guys are kind of not feeling at their hottest, and we see that shown through the fight at the very end. And I thought
Right.
very, very solid episode overall.
There were some really good subtleties to that fight too, auditory cues to bring you to that conclusion. When they shout or when they lazily say Dynazenon, it was all out of sync. None of them, they couldn't do it in unison. And also to what you were saying about the I don't want to say love triangle, but the misunderstanding with Yomogi. They are disconnected because Yomogi doesn't quite understand how to interact with her, or he's still trying to understand relationships. And we even got to see his mom hang out with the dude she's dating again. So you see him trying to, grapple with it, or just trying to understand it on some level, and he's doing the best he can and not understanding it. And especially when the eugenics dude gets involved. Yeah. While, he's just not attentive to what Yume needs or what she needs to hear, or because what the eugenics dude brought to the table was he just listened. He asked if she was okay and just listened. Didn't try to fix anything. Didn't try to butt in. Just that, and that's what she needed in that moment. And with her, my God, it's we're grappling with her figuring out, okay, did my sister commit suicide? Was she bullied? How does this bullying look? Because on the outside, sort of looks a tiny bit like friendship, sort of looks like teasing. But those little microaggressions, it's what she's trying to understand. She even saw Yomogi across the way getting teased by his friends, and you could see her trying to suss that out and try to understand what's the line. What is the line for teasing? What is the line for bullying? So I don't know, there was a lot of subtle character work this episode, and I'm just figuring things out. It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when she saw that, what I was kind of thinking was she kind of wanted to distance herself away from Yomogi, because she kind of saw it was just kind of giving her additional stress, because that's the kind of situations her sister was put in. So she just didn't want that too close to her right now because like he just reminded her a little bit
Oh.
of like that situation. Like that's how I kind of interpreted that. But yeah, like she's still like trying to figure out like her own emotions through other people. And if we're gonna be going like trying to make predictions, I feel like she's the main character, yada yada yada. But let's not delve into that too much.
But to what you're saying, that does make a lot of sense because we've noticed, or we've been shown that she's very susceptible to like visual triggers, and that like on the beach episode or water park episode where she sees something that reminds her of that instance, that's what sets her off. So no, I agree with that as well.
So
you can like that. I feel like that's really
like there's multiple ways to kind of like
media.
There's multiple ways to take that scene. And like honestly, like Yomogi was probably this is probably like a bit of a stretch, but I think that with his interactions with his mother's boyfriend or whatever relationship they have, like he kind of sees he might be like trying to mimic that in a sense because the boyfriend is trying to like insert himself into their lives, like he's trying to like help Yomogi out and do all that sort of stuff. So when he's trying to like be involved with Yume, he's kind of doing the same thing. Like he's like actively trying to like force himself like into her life and like trying to like interact with her that way. That's why he's palling around with her in the first place for like all these little like interviews with the alumni of the school. So I thought like that was like a pretty neat parallel, and it was like a really nice progression of like how things have already been in the series. Like it was a very natural flow, and I really like the way this relationship is kind of developing. On the flip side of things, for our shut-in, like I still kind of like forget his name from and I'm not gonna go back and remember it, but I thought that like I'm not sure like what sort of relationship he has with his former like classmate. Like maybe he has like some sort of like or had some sort of crush on her, but it doesn't like really like feel like too romantic. But I think like because he's like a shut-in, he doesn't really interact with a lot of people. That like when he does kind of interact with someone, especially from someone like at a time like that before he kind of like separated himself from everyone, he feels like somewhat attached. And then kind of like seeing like the other guy in the picture, like it just kind of like distanced him a little bit more away from her, and like that probably like hurt a lot more because like like he was kind of like looking for another bond, and it just doesn't feel the same. Like honestly, like their relationship like technically hasn't changed, but it feels like different. So
well, I mean,
or like their actual interactions, like the actual like physical interactions, like talking and like meeting up in that regard, is about the same, but just like a different relationship, like emotionally, I would say, for him.
I mean, like it's just something he wasn't expecting, and it was visually represented by their umbrellas, where it formed a heart toward the beginning of the what he thought was a sort of date. He even said afterward, like, why would she lead me on like this, yada yada yada, when obviously that was wasn't even her intention at all. And then we had this really effective scene of the draining montage of the husband just talking and talking, and it really conveyed how draining it must have been for him to like have to sit through that just out of sheer obligation and not wanting to rock the boat at all. And then you saw the umbrellas. That little cutaway was for two things. You saw the umbrellas break apart and not have that heart anymore, and also let you know that, hey, he forgot his umbrella. And that then led into him meeting the eugenics lady again. Which she's having herself a little bit of a I don't want to say arc, but like it's a moment of self-discovery, which is interesting. And it's also like she was so one note before, and I feel like that might be playing on. Oh yeah, typically in these types of shows, there's the one note girl one, and then they're just sort of expanding on it. Like, oh, weird. I don't have motivation. Oh, I kind of like this though. And then like to see her experiencing that is maybe a subversion of expectations, and that is potentially what they were going for there. I don't know.
Yeah, especially with like a character like Yume already in the show, like they definitely had to like switch things up with her character just to differentiate their personalities a little bit, because they're both kind of like the, kind of quiet.
They're more subdued.
Yeah, that's like a good way of putting it. At least until the end of this episode, where she's like actually shown to be a little bit crazy and a little bit more ambitious. But I thought that her like interactions with Arshaden was pretty good. Like after he's just kind of like really dejected, he's like, he's kind of wasted. So he's able to open up with her a little bit more, even though like she's the enemy, and just like them kind of like talking about like their aimlessness, like because like she's part of that group, but she doesn't feel like a particular like drive to do like the same thing that the other members do, whereas he just like he's taking on this Dynazenon thing because at least like it gives him something to do, as opposed to just like staying at home. So I kind of wish that like those two would probably like do more stuff in like the future, because I think they can play off each other pretty well. So I'm looking forward to that. The kaiju for this episode, however, is shown to be like a little bit stronger than normal. They actually had to use 2 of the members to subdue it, and they're like that was like a pretty neat like power scaling for the midpoint of this series, I would say, because eventually we're gonna need a kaiju that might take 3 or 4, may not be able to be controlled by all of them, and maybe they'll need like Galma's assistance like in the future. So like it's really nice to kind of like introduce that mechanic in, and it give like an interesting dynamic with the fight with Dynazenon, because like he's already kind of weakened and we have like a somewhat stronger kaiju, so it gives them like a pretty like realistic obstacle to kind of like kick over and get stronger. So like for that part, like pretty solid stuff. The power is also pretty cool. Like the animation, they never really skimp out on that all too much.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Like among the powers a lot of these monsters possess, a lot of them, they in some way flatten out objects.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like a lot of them have, and I wonder if that's maybe like them trying to say, oh, what the Kaiju Eugenics group wants to do is simplify things and make them, more 2D rather than 3D, like 3-dimensional. Maybe. I don't know if they're trying to say that with the power of the Kaiju. That's just sort of maybe what I'm getting off of that, if they wanted to play with that idea, and maybe what their powers mean. But then it led to the big thing, and they always do this where like you have a big reveal and they give you just enough of it, like just enough to be excited. Even last week, they didn't even say the full word suicide. They said enough, and it led into, and it got your mind racing, like, oh, what does this mean for the characters and all that stuff. And this is just like, hey, Auntie's here, bye.
Yeah, that was definitely the drop of the episode that I don't think anyone saw coming, because like for me especially, I think a day before this episode dropped, a friend of me texted like, hey, I've heard of Dynazenon, like like I saw it from like our watch along. Like, yeah, just like check it out. And he's like, oh, do I have to like watch anything beforehand? I'm like, oh no, like it's technically in like the same like universe, or like same kind of like branch of things, but I'm not sure if like nothing's really shown that they're really connected. So you can just like watch its own separate story. Watch this the next day. GRIDKNIGHT's in the last second of the show, and I immediately texted him right after our watch along. Sorry, go watch a Gridman.
And you know what? It's so nice to be surprised again.
Yeah.
You know, watching Toku a lot and having all the scans in your face, you already know what's going to happen. But, like, that, oh my god, not being spoiled on that and just experiencing that in real time. Incredible. And I can't wait to see where they're taking this. And is it actually him? Is it a different version of him? I really hope it's him. But, I don't know. It's a really good time and just playing into that quote Gridman universe thing. Very excited.
Yeah. Especially because he is a kaiju, and seeing like how he interacts with the rest of the cast, especially the DNX guys. See like if they're actually up for it, or if he's like actually like rebelling against the kaiju, if there's different types. We might learn a little bit more about that and what their role is in the universe, because like a lot of them are just kind of like destroying and rebuilding, like stuff like that. So,
but it also raises a question of like, what is even the real world anymore? Because he comes from a place where the entirety of that anime wasn't technically, or it was just
spoiler alert, by the way.
Oh yeah. Yeah, never mind. I won't say two more then.
I mean,
too
like
much more then. But
all right, yeah. This is sort of a sequel series now, so
yeah,
it's not completely confirmed yet. So we're just not gonna jump into it. If stuff happens next episode, then we'll be talking a little bit more about Gridman spoilers if they come up. So that's just a little warning from us. Anyways, do you have any final thoughts before we head out of here?
Let's get the hell out of here.
All right, well, that's from us. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check our description down below for whatever goodies are there. And if you're coming over from the watch along and you realize that it's not the actual episode, I'm sorry. But, you know, that's the thing we do on this channel, so whatever. Anyways, yeah, figure it out. That's from us. Keep it, dude.